Hi everyone, we are live with Mulu from VandMe. Looking forward to having this desperately needed conversation on baby weaning because this is a hot topic amongst mums. I'm just gonna. Hey everyone, we are chatting live with VandMe today, and I can't wait to get into the whole topic about feeding your baby, baby weaning, baby led weaning, all things about feeding. Oh, there she is. Excellent. Trying to do a view request. Ooh, why isn't it working? Bear with me. Okay. How's your day going?
Hi,
Thank you
Talks.
for joining. Oh, hey. Hi, Mulu. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am very well. So good to see you.
You too. And thank you for having me. That's very exciting.
Listen, it's a pleasure. I remember the last time we did anything together was all the way back at Easter time when we had that amazing photo shoot. Do you remember?
I know, I know. Well, hopefully we can do another one for the Halloween together as well. So
Yes, exactly. I think that would be really good. It's always so nice when you can actually see mums and babies coming in and having an experience together.
definitely,
Uh,
definitely.
I can't wait to talk in and just get to know more about V and Me, how it works, and also about baby led weaning. I've got 4 children, and I got conflicting information from family, from friends, from professionals on, feeding my babies while raising them generally in every area, but also just when is the right time to wean them? Do you go along with their own schedule, or do you do what you think is right, or do you do what Emma's Diary or every any other professional book tells us to do? So I'm really keen to have that conversation with you because that's what your specialty is, your company VandMe. I'm going to stop talking. So tell us more about VandMe.
Yeah, so exactly like you said, I set up VME kind of maybe a year and something ago
Mm-hmm.
because of all the struggles that I go through, right? You go on internet, you search for baby weaning, and then you are bombarded with conflicting information, and everyone tells you a slightly different story. So, and combined with that, it's the fact that you want to be cooking everything fresh yourself, and while you are kind of surviving on 5 hours sleep, if that kind of so we said, okay, look, what is kind of the ultimate way of doing this? We said we will want to have the professionals telling us what to do, what is the best way of feeding your children. So we have dietitian plan and look at everything that we do, including not just the food, but also how you feed children, how you talk about food, and all of that. We have professional chefs who cook things from scratch every morning and deliver to your door warm to your door every morning, and we have a very big variety of menus so that you are kind of exposing your kids to the variety of food and texture and different kind of national cuisines, all using the best kind of seasonal ingredient, which I will talk a bit more about, I'm sure, in the actual session about why these things are important when you are weaning your baby. But yeah, so that's what we do, and we believe we are the kind of we have won a lot of awards, which hopefully shows that like that's something that parents and children all approve in terms of the approach. And yeah, we are here to help parents kind of go through this bit of the weaning journey, as well as kind of going forward once they kind of become toddlers and preschoolers, the whole kind of journey, and to make sure that we bring up the children, we bring up our next generation with the best starting life that they all deserve.
I think that's amazing, and well done on creating and building such an amazing company in such a short period of time. And I agree with you 100%. It is desperately needed, and it makes sense because our lives are getting busier. When my kids were young, I mean, my oldest is 22 going on 23, so I've had many years, it's been many years of a break from having to wean babies. My youngest is 14, but I know you could call it the fear I had about feeding them myself. I actually trusted the commercial baby foods more than I trusted my own food because especially for my oldest, because I thought for some reason that I was going to either have my baby choke on the food. I just didn't trust myself enough to cook the right things. And then as time went on, I became more confident and I started to make my own baby foods. And by the time I had my fourth son, I never bought him anything at all from the shops except I think it was baby rice. And that was whenever I was going out, it was easier because there was no guarantee that I'll be able to warm up his foods and things like that. So what's a good time to start baby-led weaning? And in fact, well, let's start with what exactly is baby-led weaning, because that's a term that I didn't hear when I was having it. Was either you win your child or you don't win your child. So what exactly is this?
Yeah, so I guess people see kind of baby-led weaning as a kind of concept as opposed to the traditional way of weaning, which is more puree-led. So there are a few kind of characteristics about the baby-led weaning that's very kind of distinct with it, which is what they say is you can introduce food, kind of a wholesome looking food from the get-go. So traditionally when you wean a baby, you would puree everything down so it's a very smooth texture, whereas in baby-led weaning you would cut everything into kind of still soft texture, but they will be in finger kind of width shape so that baby can grab it. The idea behind it is there are a few kind of benefits about this. One is you want to encourage children to have this skill of kind of eye-hand coordination. You want them to practice from as young as possible to do this action, because as you know, babies, like they're like a blank sheet of paper, right? Most of the motions that they learn, it's a practice. So eating is a good time for them to practice this motion to make sure that actually goes into their mouth. Also it helps them to practice chewing as opposed to textured, like really puree down food where they kind of just swallow like a soup. But I think there are a few kind of elements around the baby-led weaning that has kind of gotten a little bit lost in the pursuit of the shape. So people kind of think, okay, I'm doing baby-led weaning, so everything has to be in this shape. But actually, a lot of the idea behind baby-led weaning is more important in the sense that, so first of all, you want to practice their skill. So you want to have finger food. Whether you are doing pureed or you are doing baby-led weaning, finger food still should be important. So even if you go down the puree route, by 7 months, you should be giving kids finger food, like soft finger food. Yes. So that they can practice this skill and practice chewing, because it's really important for your language development as well as kind of oral motor skills. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is you want to take their cue, take their lead. So it's called baby-led weaning because the idea is that the baby decides how much they eat, whereas spoon-fed traditionally means you kind of feed them however you think is right.
Want to. That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think the idea that it should be a baby-led cue is kind of true whether you go down the baby-led weaning route or the puree route. Even if you're feeding them, you should still take their cues. If they're turning their head around, they're kind of refusing to eat more. If they're giving you cues that they've had enough, you should stop anyway. So, like, I think that is another kind of concept that is important, whether you go down the baby-led weaning route or not. And then the third thing is, kind of the whole concept behind baby-led weaning is you eat kind of meal as a family together. So the idea is you don't need to cook separately and you puree down everything for your baby. If you are eating I don't know, butter toast, you can cut it into a finger shape and give it to your baby. And I think that has been lost a little bit in the pursuit of kind of having this shape.
That's right.
The mealtime together is really important. Again, whether you are giving them puree or whether you're giving them finger food. Because babies need to, how do they learn? They look at you, right? They look at role models. If they're just sitting kind of away from the table in a corner, whether it's kind of given a puree or whether they're given kind of finger food, they still need to understand kind of how do you do that? How do you chew? What does it look like? Like, what's your facial expressions? So a lot of the things I think it's quite like the baby-led weaning has a lot of very fundamental kind of benefits to them, which you can take into a more traditional way of feeding as well. And then one thing I would say about baby-led weaning, and it's kind of because no feeding method is perfect, right? You need to work out what works for you, your family, your baby, and they will a lot of times give you the cues of what they want. I think one thing to really look out for with baby-led weaning is the iron intake. So after kind of 6 months, when you start weaning your baby, typically around 6 months, their iron storage really drops, especially if you have breastfed babies. So it's really important you get those iron in there. And then one of the easiest kind of or the best absorbed kind of iron source is your red meat, or your oily fish also has your green leaf. But these are the things that's quite difficult for them to eat if you go down the purely kind of finger food route. It's quite difficult for them to chew
on meat. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So one thing you could do is to puree up those minced meat, load it onto a spoon, and ask them to try and grab the spoon and feed themselves. So you kind of get the benefit of both worlds, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, that makes perfect sense. So it's not a rigid way of feeding your baby, and it's not completely liberal so that you're afraid your child is going to starve. You're really just feeding your baby healthily, but at the same time you're following their cues and you're going along with them. But I love the fact that you emphasized hand to mouth coordination, touching and textures and all of these things. And these are features that we learn about when our child goes into preschool, or when as they're getting older, we're told to purchase toys that encourage the different them understanding different textures and doing different things, and mobility and so on and so forth. But it's never really occurred to me that you can actually do that through food as well. So that's really interesting. And if you're just joining us, we are having an amazing chat with Mulu from VandMe, and we're talking about baby-led weaning and all things feeding your baby, feeding your toddler. So she's just talked to us about the benefits of baby-led weaning, and also the benefits of feeding finger foods and foods with textures, which is what the company specializes in. And I have to say that I have tasted your meals for the babies, because you had your launch the other day, a few months ago, and I was privileged to have attended. And honestly, I didn't want to leave because the food is actually delicious, and it did cause me to begin to rethink cooking for my own family, and using less seasonings and so on, because I could taste the natural goodness in the food. Their food is cooked every day and delivered, so you might want to make sure you stay until the end, and she will tell us more again about VandMe and how you can get the service as well. So a concern I have is choking. How do we make sure that baby doesn't choke on these non-pureed foods?
Yeah, and that's a very, very common concern. And that is sometimes what holds people back from kind of moving on with the texture. So I think there's a very important distinction between choking and gagging. So gagging is a very natural reflex that babies would have to actually prevent themselves, to protect themselves from choking. So it's hard to watch, especially if you're a first-time parent. They kind of go and then their eyes go kind of sometimes they go a bit teary. They look as if they're choking. But I think one of the key difference is that if they're actually choking, you will see that they're struggling, they're no longer breathing, their face typically turn blue, and there are loads of very useful videos on YouTube that kind of tell you what natural gagging looks like. Does look like choking to a lot of kind of untrained eyes, if you like. But it's actually safe. They will bring it up. They will bring it back up if you just stay calm and let them do the thing. And I think one thing we always recommend, especially first-time parents, to do is to take a first aid course, because that just gives you a lot more confidence to know that if they were choking, you were there to be able to help them. Yeah, it's a very common concern, but it is really important for you to be moving on with the texture and then kind of work out a safe way of doing so, because like we said before, moving on with texture is extremely important in terms of building their kind of oral motor skills, their language development, and also to prevent fussy eating. So what we find is that if the kid stays on very smooth puree until kind of their 1 year, in some extreme cases, they then have to be weaned off those very smooth texture, and that's where they start to develop those very kind of limited eating patterns, the traditionally called fussy eating patterns. So it is important to kind of give yourself the tools and the knowledge to stay calm and to do it safely, but it is important to move on especially from the 10 to 12 month age. They should be able to move on to kind of almost like small kind of toddler size bites.
That's really good. So what age would you say then? I know that generally we start to wean our babies from 6 months. Would you then say that 6 months on the dot, you start to introduce these textured foods to them? Or is it safe for a baby who's never had solids to go straight onto textured baby foods?
So I think, like with everything with babies, it's quite down to the individual baby. So there are a few signs of whether the baby is ready to wean. So the first one is they have to have, they need to be able to sit on their own without support, with the neck support. And that's why typically NHS and other doctors will say that 6 months is around the age you start weaning babies. That's because physically that's when they start to develop those skills. You want them to have kind of some interest in food, and that again comes around that same age, and also you want them to have kind of, if you wean a baby really young, they usually just push out all the food with they have a reflex that they just use their tongue to push out all the food. Whereas when they're ready to wean, that reflex kind of gets better, so some of the food go in. So there are signs that you need to watch out for to make sure that your baby is ready. 6 months is kind of the standard time, but people kind of vary a little bit. You don't want to delay it too much, because first of all, you do need some of those like nutritions, for example, the iron, the calcium. You do to top up with food. And in terms of whether it's safe to introduce, so so if you were to do baby-led weaning from the get-go, you will be giving them kind of vegetables that has been cooked down to kind of mashable type of texture, so that they can grab it, they can try it, and so it is safe. But again, kind of always refer to kind of a first aid course or safety course if you're concerned that your baby might be choking, or like you want to tell the difference between choking and gagging.
I definitely agree. I agree with having parents going on a first aid for babies course, because we had one here in the shop a few before the pandemic, actually, because prior to pandemic we had a lot of events for new parents and parents to be, and one of my favorite most memorable ones was first aid for babies. It really does help with your confidence levels, and I think it would be a great idea for us to do another one again. It helps not just for your child, but when you're out there and you see another child who needs help, then you can be there to support.
Yeah, ironically, like I took one and then I only used it on my neighbor's kid. But it was very reassuring it was very reassuring to know that you kind of know what to do, and then you know how hard you are hitting and all of that. So definitely recommend it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So basically, if a baby is constantly gagging, it's not necessarily a sign that they're not ready. No.
No, I think it's something that they work through. So again, just make sure that kind of you know the difference between the gagging and choking.
Yeah, brilliant. So what would you say, do you have any recommendations for a go-to first foods for weaning? What's a nice one to start?
Green one. So you really want to start with green vegetables. So there are
Mm.
evidence that shows if you start with the green stuff,
Yeah,
um, they become less fussy throughout their time. So the reason behind it is, so traditionally, people kind of start with sweeter things because
yeah,
all babies like it, and that is true. So all babies have an innate taste for sweeter food because breast milk is sweet. Um, but if you keep introducing, or if you kind of give them too much sweet from the get-go, it's very difficult for them to then develop a palate for the bitter or the
yeah.
savory
Or
tastes.
standard foods,
Yeah,
yes.
and ironically, a lot of the if you look at kind of a lot of the other brands, what they typically do is they will say it's a green vegetable, but then they will put some apple juice in it to make sure that
Oh, wow.
but that is not the great. That's not great because what you are doing essentially is, first of all, you should not be giving those juices to
Yeah,
babies. That's a separate topic, but
yeah.
also you want babies to distinguish between different flavors, and you want them to be able to develop that taste for that palate
Right.
for vegetables, because that's kind of the problem you get on with, right? Like the green dark leaves are slightly bitter, they are savory, and
Mm,
that's why a lot of times if you have a baby that has been weaned with a lot of those commercial pouches,
mm,
don't then like the vegetables because that's not a taste that they've tasted before. It's not, at least
mm.
it's not a taste that they recognize as an individual basis, because broccoli has always been mixed with I don't know, mangoes or like,
Wow. That
right?
is such a valid point. I never thought about it. Even with the baby foods, I can't remember. Baby rice was always like I always started with baby rice when my kids were little. I didn't have the access to VMA. You guys were not launched when I had my little ones. And so I remember, but for my older child, when I was an older mom, when I had my fourth son, I do remember struggling a bit to feed him with the savories because he really loved the desserts, But I always went the other way around. I would do the savory first and then a dessert afterwards. But I like that idea. Get them used to vegetables first and to the blander foods first, and then it becomes easier for them.
And one thing on the kind of the your kids topic is, again, I would strongly encourage parents to not kind of end up doing the kind of the mistake I had when I first
Mm.
weaned them, which is stick with like vegetable and fruit, which are the easy things to feed them because they like it. It's easy. We really, so it's good idea to start with the green stuff for the initial 1 week or two, and then you very quickly need to move on to add kind of the, unless you have a dietary restriction, the meat and the fish, because
Yeah.
good fish is the omega-3, and the DHA is so good for their brain development, and it's really important to have that from the get-go, from early on. To introduce the meat, to introduce kind of pulses. Again, iron and calcium are really important to introduce some of the plain yogurts. So yeah, it's really important for you to essentially start giving them a very varied diet and
Yeah.
balanced diet from very early on. Um, I think there was a misconception that food before one was just for fun.
Mm.
I think very much the science has disproved that concept. Food before one is really important in kind of helping them get the best start in life, both in physical and brain development.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. So when mom starts to wean the baby, do you then reduce, are we meant to reduce the milk feeds?
Yeah. So milk feed will still remain one of the main sources of energy for baby, for one, but
Mm.
you are supposed to drop some so that they can. Babies have tiny stomach,
Yeah,
right? You need to give the some room for nutrition
yeah,
through actual solid food. So I think it's easier if you are kind of bottle feeding because you can measure the milligrams. So between 7 to 9 months, you probably drop to about 600 milliliter, and then by 10 to 12 months, you drop to about 400 milliliter. Again, it's kind of kids dependent. You need to understand kind of their activity level. They go through periods where they might need a bit more, they might need a bit less. And breastfed children, for breastfeeding moms, it's harder to assess that. So again, you need to see kind of your baby's cues. Are they kind of getting too full so that they're not eating anything at kind of dinner or lunchtime, etc. So that's something that you need to work out. One thing I would, again, kind of warn people, because that's a mistake I made, and I didn't know that until we were talking with the dietitians about it, is that before 1 year old, you're not really supposed to give them snacks, which is very counterintuitive given that all your supermarket shelves are full of baby snacks for kind of 4 months and above kind of thing. But before 12, if they still seem hungry after they've eaten their meals, recommendation is top up with a bit more of the milk rather than snacks, because tiny stomach, you really want to optimize the nutrition, and milk is better than all of the commercial kind of stuff that you've got out there.
Sounds good. Are there any foods to avoid?
So yes, before 1, you are supposed to avoid honey and any kind of unpasteurized. But other than that, it's really, you should kind of go as big of a variety as you can. And allergen is one thing that you need to be careful of. So you can introduce allergens as soon as you think the baby's ready. And one quite good sequence that the dietitians recommend is to introduce egg first and then peanuts. So the reason why is the children who kind of have egg allergies tend to have kind of intolerance towards peanuts as well. So testing those out first is a good idea, and then you can move on to the typical other top allergens like milk, gluten, tree nuts, fish, soya, and sesame. Once you've tested out those allergens, it's recommended that you then keep them in the diet so that they don't kind of develop allergies further down the line. And that's why we actually do include a lot of the allergens in our menu actively, compared to kind of what some of the other brands have chosen to do, because that's the dietitian's kind of advice, to actually keep the allergens there unless you have a child who is allergic to these things, because that is better for them in the long term.
That's interesting. So obviously once you discover that the child is allergic to it, then you stop. Is that what you're saying? You take it out of their diet?
So if it's a very severe allergy, you should see a doctor, and then they would usually do kind of a prick test or something to show you, to kind of tell you how severe the allergies are, and then they will usually give you a plan around it as well. So for some kids, they would say, okay, that's kind of not that severe, so you want to kind of continue have certain exposures. For others, they will say, okay, this is really severe, you need an action plan, you should not be doing this for another year or also. But this will be quite down to the individuals, and that is really where you need to seek kind of professional advice.
Yeah, that makes sense. My second son was allergic to eggs when he was a toddler, and it wasn't anaphylaxis or anything like that, but he did have a very bad a very scary reaction where one eye popped out because he had a piece of boiled egg, and then tried to get it out of his mouth by sticking his finger in, and then takes his hand out of his mouth and then rubs his eye, and that eye bleeds.
Oh no.
Yeah. And we got to the hospital and they kept saying, are you sure nothing went in his eye? I was freaking out, like literally going through red lights to get into A&E, because I thought the ambulance isn't going to get here soon enough. But he was fine. And then we kept him away from eggs for, I think, about a year or so, and just kept an eye on him. And now he has eggs all the time, and so he's outgrown it. So that's
yeah.
It's scary when people talk about allergies. You know, we always think of the worst case scenario, but it is possible to live with an allergy and still eat within, so long as you're doing it, like you said, within the guidance of a health professional.
Yeah, no, we had a similar experience with ours, also egg allergy, and yeah, we were waiting for the ambulance, and the ambulance wouldn't come. And again, yeah, I ran through red light as well, sending him to hospital. It's yeah, it was a very scary experience, but thankfully he's also outgrown it. So
that's good. That's good to. So is it so a few questions, and if you are listening and loving and enjoying this, if you have any questions at all, please pop them in here so that Mulu can answer them while we still have her online. I'm just going to check to see if we have any. Well, we have quite a few people on who've joined us. Thank you guys for joining. Let us know your thoughts and let's know if you have any questions. But I have a few questions that were sent in prior to the live starting. So what age are Vietnamese meals appropriate for?
yeah, so our meals are safe from 6 months onwards, but because most kids start weaning kind of on single component food from 6 months, we would say probably from 7 months, once you've already introduced kind of your single component food, once you've already tried all the allergies, then come on to us. That is probably the best time to start. And we do encourage kind of people to start as early as possible, as in like at that 6-7 months time period, because that time period is like 7 months to 12 months, I guess, is a golden window for you to accept, or for the children to accept, a very big variety of flavors. And we have seen some evidence in our own clientele where the babies who wing on us then grow into toddlers, and most of the toddlers go through this neophobic phase where they kind of start to not like the food that previously liked, or new foods that's being introduced. But the babies who wing on us have a slightly different journey. They don't go down to this pesto pasta only route. They still kind of they continue to enjoy majority of the food that they have. And then as soon as they kind of come out of this phase, they go back to the good old selves, right? And then they eat this very big wide variety of food, and then they kind of enjoy all different textures, different flavors. So yeah, we do encourage people to join us as early as possible.
That's really good. And do you deliver, how far do you deliver to?
We now cover all of London, so all of the London postcodes we should be able to deliver.
Okay. And is your food, can it be frozen?
It can be just like it's literally like what you cook at home, because we cook everything from scratch. We don't use any kind of, we make our own stocks, we make our own bread, we make everything, so it will be the same as if you cook at home. So yeah, you can freeze it, but we recommend people, because we have a very flexible subscription, and the food can stay in the fridge for up to 3 days. So what we really want people to do is, instead of freezing it, to use us kind of on the days that you really need us, so you don't have to freeze things, because the frozen defrosted food never tastes quite.
It's not the same. Yeah, I agree. You want it fresh anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, you can, but we encourage you. We are trying our best to make the model work so that you don't have to do it, because we think like you are freezing that because you don't have an alternative, and that we are providing you with the alternative.
It's really good. I love that we've come such a long way from the traditional way of mothering in so many respects, because I know, I mean, there's so many areas of being a mom that have been judged and regulated by society and culture over the years, from whether you are giving birth naturally or having a C-section, whether you're breastfeeding or you're bottle feeding, whether you are cooking your own meals or using a service like VandMe, or using, there's just so many areas that we find that we are judged on, sometimes sadly by each other. And there seems to be a hierarchy of what motherhood looks like, but the world has changed. Like, everything's changing at such an alarming rate.
Yeah,
we're busier than ever before. We're more knowledgeable of what's good for us and what's good for our babies. We know what to eat, what to avoid. We understand now that that stress is very bad for us, not good for with all of that in mind, having a service like VandMe really does reduce the stress and allows you to make sure that your baby is still being fed while you can still, live life in this fast-paced 2022 season that we live in. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I've heard a phrase that I always find very interesting is that, like, you can have everything as a woman, you just don't have to do everything yourself,
that's
right? And
right.
that's what it kind of that's the kind of service that allow you to do. Like, you don't have to kind of get a degree in nutrition because everything has been planned out. You don't have to like train a professional chef because everything is being cooked. So yeah, like, there are some things that you should outsource so that you can enjoy your baby, like you spend
Absolutely.
time with the baby, right?
Absolutely. Enjoy your baby, enjoy your life, enjoy being a mom, and even I mean, the stress of trying to, when if you were not, if you're even as a stay-at-home mom, there is still so much pressure today, especially if you have more than one child.
Yeah.
And running your home alone in itself is a task. So I definitely appreciate the service that you offer. Can one choose, because it is made by yourselves, can I say to you, hey, I want the texture to be a certain way? Do I have the option of choosing? Do I also have the option of vegetarian or vegan? I don't even know if vegan foods good for babies or not, but what's your thoughts on that actually?
I've got a lot to say about that. um, so in terms of texture, yes. So under 12, we offer 3 different textures. So the texture puree, lumpy puree, and a kind of what we call standard, which is toddler-sized little bites. So the idea is that, yes, whether you're doing baby-led weaning or whether you are doing kind of the more traditional weaning style, you can choose the texture with us. What we would do is, if you do go on to the kind of texture puree, we occasionally would remind you that, okay, you've been with us for a couple of months, it's probably time to move on to the next texture. Because for us, it's really important that by kind of 10 to 12 months time, you move on to the kind of standard texture. And again, like I said, whether you start with the baby-led weaning route or start with the puree route, by kind of 9 to 10 months, you should end up in pretty much the same place. So that's kind of the journey that we kind of help people to go on. And in terms of vegan diet, it's you can do it safely, but I think you do need professional help when you want to do that. So again, like a lot of the kind of micro kind of nutrients that you have or you need as a baby, it's very difficult to do on a pure plant-based diet, which is why kind of if you were to talk to our dietitians, they will probably say, okay, you probably need to have some sort of omega-3 supplement for the brain development. You will probably need to have the kind of vitamin B12. There are certain things that needs to be added on because you can't get it from, or you can't get sufficient amount of it just from the diet. So my personal view is, unless there is a very strong reason for doing that, I wouldn't recommend you going down that route unnecessarily. But yeah, so that's the way we plan out our menu. So we include a variety of kind of both plant-based and animal-based sources of nutrients, because we think that is the best way. Kind of yeah.
I absolutely agree. That's good to know about the flexibility. And the vegan question actually just popped into my head because I know that a lot of people are vegans and want to raise their children how they, are eating and so on. But it did occur to me that, can you even safely do that for a child? Because babies need all of the ingredients, all of the nutrients rather, that they can for healthy development. And I know that with veganism, sometimes you have to take supplements, and I wouldn't imagine anyone wanting to do that to a baby. But anyway, just some comments here. So Yvette Yvette. I haven't pronounced your name properly. Forgive me. Very nice, interesting conversation. Good to know of your service. Thank you. And then I've got a question. What did you wish you knew when you started weaning your baby? That's an interesting question. Mulu, do you want to go first?
Yeah. What do I wish I knew? I think so. We went down the baby-led weaning route, and then I was one of those fundamentalist baby-led weaning kind of mother who was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna do the puree. And I think what I wish I knew, and having to talk to the dietitian, is that it's not a black and white kind of picture. Like I said, I made all the mistakes that I talked about today. Like my baby was low on iron, so he kept getting sick. And then what I wish I knew was that you can still go down, you can still kind of adhere to a lot of the reason why I found baby-led weaning appealing without compromising on the nutrition. So kind of combining, like I said, combining some of the pureed food on a spoon so that he can feed himself with the finger food that I was giving him, and knowing that it's really important to introduce the fish, the meat from early on. I think those are the things that I wish I knew, and I think that actually had a really big impact on kind of the stress level I had as well in the early days. Yeah, so what's yours?
Mine, that's interesting. Mine, I think, would be with my first son. I stopped breastfeeding him because I didn't understand that I could do both. I thought it was you feed the baby first milk and then you start to feed them solids, you know. And I also had this, you know, had I mean, how old was I? I was a young mom. I was 23, no, 24 maybe, 25. I can't remember how old I was, but when I had my oldest son, and so I think that's probably what mine was I didn't understand that I could combine the two. I think I started winning him about 6 months, and again I was very rigid, and I thought it had to be 6 months, and it had to be. And it's wonderful when you have a village and you have so much support and you have people who are there for you, but it can be rather confusing and stressful when you're getting conflicting information from different people, and especially as a new mom, when you just want to get everything right, you know. And so when you talked about the stress, I can relate to that. And that's, we have in our boutique here on the King's Road, we have new moms coming in all the time. Our clients come and they choose their furniture and everything, and then they come back with a baby. And I always have the same advice for our first time moms, which is there is no right or wrong way. Just go with your gut, because you're naturally designed to mother that child. You know, go with your gut and be comfortable with it. Because my stress was, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? That person said that's wrong. That person said this is right, you know. And so that's the thing. And that's why we hold these live events as well, rather these live Instagram sessions as well, so that we can equip moms and moms to be, and just really help them in and reduce the stress levels, you know, reduce the questions, and help in any way that we can to make those first few years of being a mom as memorable and as stress-free as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so thankful to have you, Mulu, and thank you for your wealth of knowledge and for being so open and generous with your information, and for even creating your business as well. I love communicating and just being involved with businesses that have at the back of their mind the welfare of their customers, you know, and that's what you had when you started your business. So well done.
Thank you very much, Talks. Likewise.
You're welcome. So how can people subscribe? How can they find you? What's the process?
Yeah, so go to our website, vandme.co.uk, and select whether you're a baby or toddler, select your meals, and then just tell us which days you would like to receive the meals. And we will be there in the 1 hour chosen slots that you have. And yeah, and then we take care of the lunch, dinner, and dessert. So you have very little to worry about.
That's awesome. Listen, you guys, Mulu and VandMe are like the octopus mom with multiple arms. So this is one of your arms here. Or maybe even two or three of your arms all rolled into one company. But thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Mulu, for joining us. Thank you, all of you, for joining us as well. And remember that you can watch the replay if you joined us halfway through, or share the replay with your followers, with your friends, anyone who you feel is going to benefit from this, which is everyone who has a baby or is about to have a baby. Also, make sure that you follow VandMe as well as the Baby Cut Shop so that you can stay up to date with our lives and everything that we're doing. We do have something in the works, which is a Halloween photo shoot. If you were involved in our Easter photo shoot with live bunnies, you will know just how fun that was. So we're working towards something else. So stay tuned. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Mulu.
Thank you for having me, Talks.
You're
And I'll see
welcome.
you very soon.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.